that'd be going from bad to worse, man. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hey, we're live. I was just saying, I hope it doesn't turn on when I have to get this deep breath out. Hey, everybody, welcome to Heaven's Help Desk. My name is Curtis. You already see the team. The team's already here. Let's go. Welcome, Karin. Welcome, Chris.
Hello.
Hey.
Everyone, thanks so much for coming. What we're doing here is it's so fun because it's like we're going to get questions and we're going to try to answer them the way we think you would get an answer if you ask those questions to the help desk in heaven. Like, you get there and it's like, hey, I've always wondered. So we're going to be doing that, drawing from the Theological Teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg, which is like A-okay with me. Let's go right into it. We're always pressed for time on these. So let's get to our first question. This is one from Anonymous Aussie, who asks, does Swedenborg ever talk about timelines while we are on the earth? Can a person raise their vibration, be kinder, more loving, closer to God, and shift to a better timeline? We were just talking about this before we came on. I guess we have to define what timeline is, because I think different people have different meanings for that word. So if anyone wants to answer, you can, but you got to tell me what you mean by timeline.
Okay, I'll get us started.
Nice.
The impression I have of the concept of timelines is that there's like another version of myself living this life in another dimension, kind of, and that, that it might be better than the one I'm living here. So like another option of this life I'm living in some way. So that's the impression I have of it. And specifically like during earthly life. And so my first thoughts to this question is that no, I don't find Swedenborg talking about different timelines for earthly life, so that I don't get the impression that there's sort of an option to move into a whole different version of my earthly life. But you can certainly, by what did the questioner say? By raising your vibration, being kinder, more loving, closer to God, you can certainly move into a better experience of this life that you're living, a better perspective, because we know from psychology as well as spirituality that you can be living through incidents and events and experiences, but have a very different experience of what's happening depending on your state of mind, right? And different people can go through similar outer events, but some are suffering more than others. Some are in a better place of, a better place of trust, so they're feeling more hopeful or whatever. So I think that's how I think of what can be done by, all this regeneration process and getting closer to God and building that trust and building kindness and everything, that you can morph into a better experience of this life, this life that you're living. So that's my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this was an interesting question to explore. I kind of took it similar to how Karin was thinking, but my first thought was, on Earth, our inner state constantly associates us with communities in the spiritual world of like character. So as our loves are reformed and we come into different companies in the spiritual world while living on Earth, Swedenborg says that there are countless heavenly communities, and we are inwardly present to them according to our quality of life here on Earth. So I don't think Swedenborg teaches necessarily about timeline hopping, but he does teach that inner changes, becoming kinder and more loving to God and to our neighbors, truly shift our spiritual state, our companionship with these spiritual communities, and our felt nearness to God. And I think that's kind of a Swedenborgian way to a better timeline, if you would.
Oh, I love that, because I was thinking after that, right, that the mechanics of if you're having a better perspective or what's going on is because you really are changing your spiritual company, like you are morphing to different places and communities in the spiritual realm where our spirits live. And so there's so much more going on in our lives than we realize, behind the scenes. So I love that.
So I was trying to figure out, what do they mean by timeline? And so I searched, Googled timeline, and it was all this stuff about what a timeline is. I was like, no, time. And I Googled timeline spiritual. Like, what's the term being used for? And so the AI summary, which is what I want to respond to, is a person's unique path of spiritual growth throughout their life, or the idea of interconnected, non-linear timelines of possibility that can be navigated through spiritual and personal choices. So the closest analog I can think of in Swedenborgian cosmology is the idea of the differing tiers of providence, so that there are things in divine providence that God tolerates, things that God wills, or things that God tolerates, things that God accepts, and then things that God wills. So they all accomplish the goal God wants to accomplish. Some of them, though, it would be nice if there was a different way to do it, but there's a constraint even on the divine because of the limits of human free will. So you can be living your life in a certain way, and there's got to be some toleration stuff to get through. But then you might be able to bump yourself up into more of the accepting and willing, the things that God would rather have dictate the course of your life. And I think too about Chris, you were talking about the spiritual presence with us, and that you can, depending on how your life is going, either you've got the angels kind of trailing behind and they're just trying to play catch up if you're being led by negative stuff, or if you reverse that, the evil influences with you are out into the periphery and the angels are kind of leading the way. So that seems like a different timeline. It's all Providence is trying to converge it toward the same endpoint, but it seems like there are different, you can take route A, B, or C to get there.
Yeah, I like that. So true. It's all leading to a similar goal, but you could take different paths there. Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Anonymous. This next one is from Sigrid. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering, how do I get a question submitted on this? These are all questions from our members, which means that everyone who has these questions has supported the Swedenborg Foundation. Thank you so much. If you want to get your question in, become a member today. And then you can not only know that you're helping us as a nonprofit, but you can become famous on the internet through a question. This is from Sigrid, who asks, hello, I have a question for you about correspondences. We like correspondences. In John chapter 6, from verses 48 to 58, Jesus is talking about himself as the bread of life. It also contains the teachings of the Holy Communion, to eat his flesh and drink his blood. I would appreciate it so much if you could share your thoughts on this matter. And if Swedenborg have any teachings on this topic, I would love to hear them. Thank you so much for this opportunity to ask questions and for this wonderful podcast. You're welcome. We appreciate you. Thanks for writing in. Luckily, there's quite a lot of teaching about this from Swedenborg. You never know. Sometimes we have to be like, he doesn't really touch on that. Not so with this. There's a lot he has to say.
Yes. And in fact, we did a past show. Curtis and Jonathan did one. It was called Jesus Wants Us to Seek the Deeper Meaning of His Words. And it addressed this very story in John 6. And it's such a cool story because Jesus has a bunch of followers, not just the 12, but a whole bunch more that follow him around, mainly because, he's doing these amazing things, these healings and everything. And they are asking him for a sign, like they're always wanting more, like miracles, please, a sign. And like the manna that came down for our ancestors from heaven. And that gets Jesus talking about bread, but he is trying to raise their minds to a different kind of bread, right? And because they're wanting physical, they want these physical signs, they want this physical food, and he is there, Jesus is there to try to teach people about their spirits and the kind of nourishment that their spirits need. And so and at the same time, whenever Jesus was talking, we talked about in that show, he was talking not only to people on earth that were standing there with him, but to spirits and angels too, and talking to all of us for all time. And so he talked in symbolism because that could bridge the worlds. Like he can be talking to beings in both worlds at the same time. So he uses correspondences, uses these physical world images to mean spiritual things. And just like our bodies need physical food, our spirits need spiritual food. And that's what he's talking about when he says, you've got to eat my flesh and drink my blood. So, which was in the story here, like, that's the point where many of these followers just said, like, that's it. What the heck is he talking about? I'm out of here. And they left because they just couldn't handle, like, what are you saying? I don't understand, and I want a miracle. And so we're leaving. Interesting story. But so basically, bread and food and flesh all correspond to something our spirits need a whole lot of, which is goodness. Goodness and love. We have to have that for our spirits to have food. And water, wine, and blood all correspond to something our spirits also need, which is truth or wisdom. And to eat or drink physically corresponds to absorbing things into our spirits. So just like we need to eat food and drink water, our spirits absolutely, to be sustained, need to absorb love and goodness and need to absorb truth or wisdom. And Jesus here is saying, you need to absorb the love and goodness that is from me and the truth and wisdom that is from me, which is my flesh, my blood. Yeah, that's basically what's being talked about there.
Yeah, that's a great summary of it. And if anybody says that's not what you're just making that up, it's like pretty clearly spelled out in a couple of places. First of all, there's the woman at the well. Isn't that where Jesus says, if you come to me, you'll have living water and you'll never be thirsty again? And then he's like, because I'm talking about the truth that I give you. And then we shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. Have you guys ever heard the term cringe before? That's I believe that's a song I've heard in church that is from a quote from Jesus, or from a quote from the Bible.
Yeah.
That says, we shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So, like you said, Karin, what bread, which Swedenborg at one point says that bread corresponds to that because it is, quote, the mainstay of life, or has been for centuries for a lot of cultures. It sustains the body in the way that goodness sustains the soul, the way that love sustains the soul. Yeah, man. Chris, what do you think?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most amazing examples of correspondences creating like a framework for understanding spiritual reality. As everyone said, bread or eating of the flesh, that is the Lord's divine goodness or love. Wine or blood is the Lord's divine truth. And then eating or drinking of that is what he would refer to as appropriation, or receiving goodness and truth into life so that they can become ours. And so I think of like John 6 as teaching the same reality as what the Holy Supper enacts. The Lord gives himself, his love and his wisdom, or his flesh and his blood, to be made our own through a life that receives them. Then we are in him and he is in us. It's just such a great paradigm.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I love your cozy fire back there. Stuart, can you pull up his look at that thing just like blazing away in the first chilly days of November.
It's chilly here in Connecticut, and this thing does me well.
Man, I'm assuming that was AI, but I think that's real, man. I think that's real.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. Who knows anymore?
Who knows?
So the what were you just talking about? That was great. Oh, you're talking about eating and drinking, and how it brings something that is bizarre. That you said, Karin. A lot of people in the story leave because they say, "Oh, you're creeping us out. We thought we liked some of the things you said, but you said that we have to eat your flesh and drink your blood. I don't even want to hang out with you anymore. I'm out of here." It takes something weird like that and it makes it into something that those people wouldn't have left for now. When you talk about appropriating, but it's not just, but it also, Swedenborg's explanation of correspondences tells you why Jesus said it like that. Because he's not just saying, I'm going to choose this funny way of teaching you to bring goodness and truth into yourself. Jesus was the Word made flesh, and it was knew all the scripture, quoted scripture all the time. Everywhere, according to Swedenborg, in scripture, everywhere where it talks about eating, it's talking about the same thing as making a part of your life. So you go throughout all the stories, and everywhere where it's talking about drinking, where it's talking about the water and the wine, it's talking about truth. And everywhere where it's talking about bread, all the way back to the unleavened bread and the show bread in the temple, it is talking about goodness. So he is doing it in the tradition of all scripture. That's why he says it the way that he does there. And then suddenly you're walking out thinking, that's all got, that is real sleek, real elegant. And oh yeah, I would live by that. I wouldn't walk away from that.
For sure. Yeah. And our next question is very related.
Okay, are we feeling ready to move on to Q3? Great. This is from Fred Brackman, who asks, I would love to see an OTLE video on the Holy Supper, which is what we were just talking about, covering the topic similarly as it is in the book New Jerusalem. Have we never done that, or have we done that?
We have. Fred, you're in luck.
I would be surprised. I would be surprised. So listen, Fred, no judgment here. Like, I can't even remember. I'm sure I was in that video, but you got to understand, we have more than 1,800 videos on this channel, let alone the other channels we've done things on. So yes. So what was, but all that said, Karin remembers every part of every video we've ever done. So let me know. What did we do?
Not quite everyone, but closer than I think anyone else. You and Chelsea did 2 videos about baptism and Holy Supper.
That's
and
true.
The one about Holy Supper is called How Spiritual Communion Works. And that was, just great looking at some things Swedenborg said about Holy Supper. It's so interesting to me that, in the Israelite Jewish tradition, there was many rituals, right? Many rituals. And when Jesus came, he boiled it down to 2 main rituals, which was baptism and Holy Supper, or Holy Communion. And he introduced that at the Last Supper. And Swedenborg points to these 2 as, like significant because they symbolize kind of 2 main aspects of spiritual life. One, baptism is a representation of making a commitment to the path of spiritual rebirth, or the path of regeneration. And you don't have to have the outer ritual to have that happen, but because of correspondence, if you are doing that ritual with an inner intention to really commit to this path, there's a power in that. This is something Swedenborg says. There is a power in correspondences when the inner intention is sincere. And so Holy Supper, so that's something you do once, unless you're changing denominations or you had it as an infant and you want to do it as an adult or something. But in general, baptism is a one-time, like it's the commitment to the path. And Holy Supper, it's so fascinating that that's a ritual that is to be taken at intervals, not just done once, but multiple times through your life. If again, not necessary as an outer thing, but there's a power to it, because what it symbolizes is very necessary, which is to continually take in goodness and truth from the Lord. Because just like with physical food, you don't eat one day and drink one day and then you're done. You have to do it every day, right? And so it's a ritual that has in it, in the powerful symbolism, this practice of daily being open to and absorbing goodness and love from the Lord, and open to absorbing, taking in, and using truth and wisdom, and both for the sake of, like, we eat and drink so that our bodies have energy to do things, So we take in those things regularly so that we can, from our spirits can go out into the world and use that goodness and truth from the Lord to fuel our lives and our actions and everything, both in this world and the next. So it's a ritual that holds within it a remembrance that we need to do this continually. And it is traditionally, and Swedenborg also encourages this, that the best way to do it is in connection with some self-reflection, like knowing, looking at, taking some self-examination, looking at some things maybe you're struggling with and need help with, and taking that, that Holy Supper with a humble heart to ask for the Lord's goodness and truth to help you absorb that and move on to a better life.
That's great. A complete correspondence, because just like everything about what the food and the drink does powers the body in the way the spirit's powered.
Yes.
That's great. Chris, do you want to weigh in?
No, I feel like Karin nailed it. I have nothing else to say on the matter.
Well, then I'm going to weigh in here because, one thing you said, Karin, was you don't have to do these rituals, but there's like a symbol in them that's important. It's kind of like this hybrid thing. And I was reading Secrets of Heaven, Volume 10 last night. And man, I came across something brand new in there, which is about direct and indirect truth from God. So there's like direct truth that comes out of God, and actually you actually receive that truth into your will. It's truth, but you feel it as love. And then there's indirect truth, which is like the truth you absorb through like religion and the word and stuff that's written. And it's only when those two harmonize in you that you can have perception. So that means you need to have the indirect truth because you need to see, like, let's say, some religious teaching in front of you. And the direct truth from God in your heart tells you if that thing is true and how to understand it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? So yeah. I was like, that's pretty cool. And it just made me think of that's what these rituals are in a way. It's like you have the indirect truth, which is this outward form. And if that lines up with the attitude that ritual symbolizes being in your heart, then it's kind of those two things lining up as well,
That's so cool. I love that. And you've made me think about it. So there's these three symbols of truth: water, wine, blood. And it's like the water is like just knowledge, like we need this knowledge, this sort of basic intellectual truth more. And then wine has this fermentation going on, so it's when it's actually causing us to make some changes and things. But the blood, it's warmth, and you said directly into your heart. Like it's truth that's really getting married to goodness and love. It's like so the Lord's blood, more like wisdom, like truth that has love in it. So just brought that to mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, water's great, but blood is obviously something more inside you than that. It's like that's the stuff that's literally, you have really, really integrated that once it's blood. It's like it couldn't be more part of you than that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
you take in the water and then your body's making blood. Like it's right inside, like the Lord's making that into wisdom.
And I'm not trying to gross anyone out, but you don't take it all in, like you pee some out afterwards. And I think that's kind of like we take in a bunch of truth. Some of that becomes part of our blood. Like we really live it, and it's and the other stuff is like got to go its way. But it was nice. It nourished us and it did something, but it doesn't become like part of what circulates in us.
And that sort of parallels with wine that's in a process of fermenting, sorting things out. Our bodies do that. And so there's all these aspects to truth becoming part of our lives and fueling it.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Fred, for the question. And hopefully, you can find that episode and watch it and enjoy it.
How spiritual communion works.
Yeah, you should be. We should be able to search that on YouTube. Okay, so before we get on to our next question, I have two fun things for you. The first is, hey, there's a way you can support the not-for-profit Swedenborg Foundation and make it so we can produce all the content that we produce, including translating and publishing Swedenborg's books, everything you see online, events, things like that. And we have right now a special campaign going that you can be a part of if you want to. So this is called the Unveil the Spiritual World campaign. We have a quote from True Christianity. The Lord has provided and arranged that the more our thinking and willing come from heaven, the more our spiritual self opens and adapts. So this is a support campaign that we're running. There's more information about it in the link in the description. If you want to be part of that, have your gift go farther to support us, we would be so very grateful. Open up the description, click the link. We know that a lot of you have already supported us. We're super grateful, and that's what makes it so we can do what we do. Mm-hmm. Speaking of, like our gratitude, one thing we like to do is go out and get to meet people who have connected with us and support us. And we did just that a couple weekends ago. We went to San Francisco to tape a live episode of the podcast, which is actually in the show that just posted. If you haven't seen it yet, it's me and Jonathan on the road in a special location doing a special show. And we made a quick little video about it here for you that we wanted to share with everyone. So this is our journey, our odyssey to the West Coast of the United States. We went to San Francisco to do something that had never, ever been done before, which was record an episode of the Swedenborg Life podcast on the road in front of a live audience. Hilly. There was a lot of big hills and things. It's hard to get up. We were in the San Francisco Swedenborgian Church, which is chock full of awesome history of famous figures who had been into Swedenborg. Robert Frost got baptized in there. The space itself has got all these correspondences worked into it. So it was a very apropos setting for talking some Swedenborg ideas. Doing the episode of the podcast was really fun. I didn't know if people were going to enjoy that, sitting there for the whole hour, but we had people hooting and hollering.
And I don't even know that what I just said is true, but...
None of this is intended to be true. And you could feel the impact of the ideas as they went out. So I loved it. The event kicked off with our VP of Development, Tim, thanking the members and donors for being there and expressing what we try to do through the videos was nice to do in person, that we couldn't do what we do without their support. So that was great. And then Reverend Lee, who's the pastor at that church, gave a little crash course in some of the symbolism and meaning behind the structure itself. So that was a cool connection to make. So that was like the warm up, and then we eased right into the podcasting fun. We got to talk to a lot of people afterwards, and we got some really moving feedback, which was people who felt like that episode spoke to them right when they needed it at the right time, which is, we'll get comments about that on videos as well. So it's cool, though, to see it in a real person, get to look them in the eye and hear what was important about it to them.
I haven't physically lived near like a church building such as this one that's close enough to realistically get there. You are my church. You are that substitute. That's as close as I'm going to get. So I really, really, really appreciate it and lean on it.
I've been following Swedenborg for many years. So I've been really appreciative of your, Curtis, deconstructing those on the left eye and then the work with the translations and everything so far. Love what you guys are doing. Please continue. I do support it, and I'll continue to look for ways to support it.
I first heard about Swedenborg kind of during a period of spiritual awakening. Even though I was starting to get it, I was trying to do it on my own, and I realized you guys had a podcast. I was able to kind of get my questions answered by watching your guys' interactions. It just helped me understand it better. It's been nice to have something more digestible than just the text to share with other people.
I definitely feel like these kind of events, they do something that you can't do in any other way, which is to go make these in-person connections, get to meet and really interact with your audience and forge connections and get to deepen the relationships with our members and donors and fans. There's no substitute for that, and I think hopefully we've deepened and some relationships, started some new relationships that will continue long into the future.
I know life is busy, and you always feel like, I don't want to have to go to that thing. I'll just say anecdotally, when people show up to these, they seem really glad that they've come. And for a lot of people, it's cool because you're getting to meet people for the first time in person who know what a Swedenborg is. Suddenly you're amongst friends and people who share your interest in this particular obscure but amazingly enlightening philosophy. So it can be a pretty powerful experience for people. I saw people at this event just soaking that in, that they get to talk about this thing that they love with other people who are there with them.
That was cool. That was good music at the end.
Right.
Our next event will be San Diego at the very tippy end of January. So if you're in the neighborhood, we'd love to see you. Let's get back to it. We had plenty of time to slack off during that video. Let's get back in shape here. This is question 4 from Ebo, who asks, in today's diverse spiritual landscape, many of us navigate the delicate balance between deeply personal internal faith and the more vocal doctrinal expression often encountered from devoted believers, such as missionaries. Drawing on Swedenborg's teachings, how can we compassionately engage in respectful dialogue when religious language or direct questions about belief feel invasive or uncomfortable? Further, what guidance does the new church offer to help us honor both the private, intimate nature of our spiritual journeys and the sincere outward devotion of others, fostering mutual respect and understanding across different faith expressions? Some good, earnest questions from Ebo. Can we give him any food for thought? Like as correspondence, we were just talking about food.
Yeah, I could. Karin, do you want to go? You want me to go?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is. I really love this question. It's been a part of my lived experience, being a member of like a multi-faith household, growing up, all different walks of religious life, and having to navigate these kinds of conditions. This is what I wrote. I wanted to share a little bit of my thinking from Swedenborg on this. So we need context first. So Swedenborg grounds spiritual life in both freedom and rationality. God safeguards this equilibrium between heaven and hell precisely so that our choices are free. Only what is accepted in freedom becomes truly ours. It's important to note that compulsion doesn't reform anyone. So this is kind of where I get into a dialogue style with others who have different convictions about faith and religion. So we want to protect others' freedom and our own freedom. And one way to do that is by speaking from goodwill, willing what is good for others and acting to help them. And let truth be offered, truth as we believe it, be offered but not forced. And then to truly believe and recognize that faith is an inner recognition of truth conjoined with love. To have that inner recognition and the affection for that truth be expressed in the way you live. That can't be created by debate or putting pressure on others. So if you're feeling that, just know that there's an equilibrium here that God protects. Some things that have helped me are using I statements about my Swedenborgian values and practices. This honors freedom while still allowing me to witness the truth in my own life and show that to others. And I think most importantly, what's worked and helped me is prioritize goodwill-based uses. Leading with the truth that I've come to embody in my life. So the quality of my kindness, fairness, sincerity, all these things that are kind of the goodwill expressions of the truth in us, I think are very magnetic, and people feel really drawn to living a life so profoundly with the truth. So I know it's hard to interface with other people with very strong convictions. But when I lean into the outcome of, letting Swedenborg's teachings become my operating system, I think people will actually find warmth in that. And it's just one way of going about it that's helped me through similar scenarios.
Dude, yeah, thank you for the personal response. You know, that I think that's really effective when people see it's actually how this guy handles these situations. So I can take something from that. That's great. I love it. Karin, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, that's so great, Chris. Yeah, I love that. I think that's like the Swedenborgian concept that you can bring into these situations is come from goodwill, because Swedenborg talks about how it was in the ancient church where people did have a lot of different doctrinal ideas, but they knew that goodwill has to be the thing that leads. And so you can handle having different points of view and even talk about them, even have discussions about them without needing to get mad or feel defensive or try to force somebody else into seeing things your way, which is a lost art in the human race, and it's a struggle to get back to it. But it's so great to me to know that we as a human race did know how to do this at one point in our history, and so we can get back. And I do feel like this I see this hopeful trend as people are tired of division and everything, that more and more experimentation into how can we talk together, and not hate each other while having different opinions. And so to know that like that is possible and that is the goal. And then it comes down to just like different tools and trying things. And of course, it's going to be different with each person. Is this just an acquaintance, or is it a family member, or is it just somebody online, or somebody that came to your door? Like I had a couple of nice young men come to me from, I think it was Latter-day Saints church, and just say, do you want to come to church this Sunday? And I just said, gave him a big smile and said, oh, thank you. I already have a church I'm going to, but thank you so much. And he took that fine. Like, okay.
What, was that recently?
It was just like day before yesterday. Yes.
Did they come to your door?
They did. I hadn't had that happen in many years, but
I think that'd be stressful to do.
Yeah. But like gratitude.
I mean to be them.
Oh yeah, I know. I felt so bad, and I young people. It's always young.
I would
people.
go to their church just so because they probably have so many people who are like, "What are you doing? Get out of here!" Like it's the last thing I would want to do. Yeah, sure, I'll come. Yeah, you guys, don't worry about it. I'll come to your church.
Yeah, just bless them. Like one guy was hanging way back, like he was super uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and this guy was just bravely there, and he just said it so quickly, like he had to just pump himself up.
I know.
You want to come to? So it just, I think that it does a lot just to try to have a friendly response instead of an irritated response. Like grateful that someone would care enough to try to save my soul.
Well, okay, so that makes me think of I don't have a ton of really religious interactions in real life, but on the internet we all the time get comments, and I think that the concept of the different states, different categories of the neighbor. So there's the correspondence of being hungry, thirsty, tired, in prison, sick, all the categories Jesus lists. There can be a time, I think in prison corresponds to trapped by false ideas. And you can there's people will comment on our channel and say, this is false doctrine. You're all going to hell. Don't listen to this person. But some people, that's because they really believe that that's true, that they have a false, what I would say is a false set of ideas that traps them, which is like, you have to get doctrine exactly right or else you go to hell. The doctrine. So you think about it, if they have a good heart, but are trapped by those ideas, they have to say that. I would say what they were saying if I was them under the same. So I think there's sometimes when somebody's at a point where it's like, there's too much, like, especially with something like that, where you need to have the right faith or you go to hell forever. There's too much fear in there. They're too locked that you can't really reason with them but instead you can just like, well, I think, Karin, your team will comment on the responses like, well, thank you so much for sharing your concern with us. And, sometimes if somebody's not that rigid about it, then you can do this dialoguing. But there's times when you just got to say like, all right, this person is in a state where I need to cater to them a bit, but you don't always. So I think that's part of the discernment. But
Yeah, right. It's individual with each case, and I think that a gratitude and assuming the best about their intentions is very important to start off. Another tool that is helpful to me is just looking for common ground, looking for things we do agree on, and trying to focus on that, not just on the things we disagree on, because I think more often than not, you have more in common than you think. So much as semantics or just, the core principles are
if
the same.
it's a soft conversation, like if they're not too like rigid, and I'll often try to find. I bet that I have my own terminology for the exact thing that you're describing.
Mhm.
That with if I go like on somebody's show or podcast on YouTube, usually what their worldview is, Swedenborg has an analog to that. He would say different words, but he's describing a similar process. That can be kind of like, oh yeah, you're saying that. What I would call that is this, and that can create some common ground.
Yeah, exactly. Something that Pastor Chuck often says, that's where Curtis sometimes gives talks at New Church Live, strong back, soft front. So you want a soft front, a kind, respectful front, but have your strong back. Like if someone's going to keep pushing, like Chris, you were mentioning, like you need to guard your internal faith. It's not appropriate that anyone should try to force you out of it or into something else. So we all have to decide, like, what are the principles we think make sense, and allow ourselves to keep those while being respectful of of others are going to do that too, and should do that too.
Yeah. It's a great, in a way, this is a great sandbox for, depending on the intensity of the circumstance, this could either be true or not. But, we have these moments where we can really, flex the spiritual muscles that we're building. And, one of the things that's so amazing about Swedenborg's description of the afterlife is, angels, they see the lens by which they view things is they see the good in others, and they connect to that good. And it's easy when it's easy on earth. When you have a tribe and everyone kind of loves and believes similar things or whatever. But when there's differences, that creates an opportunity to really work on kind of building that spiritual strength up and practicing good intentions and trying to embody how angels operate. Like Curtis and Card mentioned, we see this all the time online. And it's an amazing thing to be able to see the good when someone's coming at us with a lot of like maybe doctrinal differences or aggression. It could actually be incredibly disarming to actually meet them in that place, looking for the good, trying to find those moments of connection, because heaven isn't a place for one type of people. There may be good in a lot of different types of walks of life that we can connect into and appreciate, and something could form there. So this is an opportunity at times for that kind of good work to happen.
Very cool. Hey, that was a big topic. Let's go to a simple one: the problem of evil. This next question is from Julie. Thank you. Thanks, Evo, for that question. The next question is from Julie. I have confusion around the topic of evil. I hear Swedenborg and religion talk about evil. Then I hear that Earth is a planet of duality with light and dark, which gives us contrast for each of us to choose the light. If God is the ultimate creator, did he create evil? Thank you so much. Best wishes to you and your team. Thanks, Julie. Let's see what we can do with this. I mean, it's one of the fundamental discussions of theism. Can we give anything valuable here in the form of a response?
Yes, I'm going to quick recommend a playlist we have called God and Evil. You can go to our home channel and click playlists and look for what is it called? Theodicy?
Theodicy,
yeah. God and Evil, because that gives a longer answer. But briefly, God did not create evil. He created life and existence with all these layers, and evil came into being when the outer layers, through human choice, started to separate from the inner layers. So instead of using our physical senses to support the knowledge of God. We started to use that to prove things to us instead of inner perception, or this wonderful sense of autonomy God gave us, feeling life as our own, instead of using that in support of acknowledging the connection we have with everyone and our dependence on God. When that started to be used to validate separateness and superiority and competition, it turned dark. And so evil just came about from a separating of things that were supposed to be connected to something deeper, and just as like a body will die when the spirit leaves it, when an outer level things separate from the deeper reality that they're supposed to embody, it becomes dark, which is spiritual death. That's what the Bible is talking about when it's talking about spiritual death. So that becomes evil. And it is true that now that evil does exist, evil gives us this perspective, this contrast that God provides. We can learn from that to better identify goodness and light, better understand the quality of things. But we could have, if we get back to a better state of being here on earth, we can have less severe contrast. Like we can have the contrast between a sense of autonomy and a sense of connectedness, a sense of self and a sense of God is everything. So it wasn't something God created so that we can have this contrast. It's something that got very severe. But again, God brings good out of everything. And now, because we can see evil, we can better understand good. And the last thing I'll say about that is in the series, in the playlist that I mentioned, Jonathan directly addresses this verse in the Bible, Isaiah 45:7, that said, I, the Lord, create. It's a list of things God is saying he created, and it says created evil or darkness and the light. I forget the exact wording, but it seems to be saying God created evil. But Jonathan's inviting us to look at the greater context of the Bible, like in the creation story. Everything God created was good and everything. So a way to understand that is when God shines a light, like if we're just living in a dark room, we don't even know what dark is. But when God shines a light, the light of goodness, it identifies what is evil. It identifies the darkness from the light. So in that sense, Jonathan invites us to understand the verse that way, that I create evil, meaning I identify, I differentiate between the evil and the good, and therefore you can see it now. So that's my thoughts about all that.
Great. Good thoughts. I have a few. Chris, did you want to go first, or do you want me to launch
Please,
into it?
you go first.
Yeah, well, I loved Karan's explanation. I think a way for me to wrap my head around evil is, sure, it's there. Like you can't say there's not, suffering and everything that we would say as evil, but it can also be like it's not really a thing at the same time. If you think about the human body, think about the body. So it's there. If that's what God created, and it's got all of it's got its order to it. It's got the systems that have to be the way they have to be. Everything has to be in a certain place. Everything has to function a certain way. Like evil is like the messing with it. Like if I'm going to want someone's toy, so I bop them on the head, like that's like the harming. The evil is the harming of that, but it's not a thing in itself. It's just the ruining of the good thing. The good thing is a thing, because like if there was no person, you couldn't have evil then there. Like there's not an actual structure or form of evil. Everything we think of as evil, like disease, violence, those things are just a degrading of what exists. Like if there were no human beings in the world, there can't be evil, because there's nothing. Evil is just a hurting of something that's good, and I think that's similar to the idea of cold being the absence of heat. It just means the particles aren't moving. Cold just means they're not moving. Heat is the movement of them. Darkness not a thing. You can't like, I'm going to put a box of darkness in here. It's just there are no photons. Photons, which would make light, which are light, that's the thing. So in that way, like, yeah, there really is. Really, the things that are created are good. There's just a latent potential to invert it, which I guess that. So it's kind of like wait. So it's like you can. Yeah, you can look like inside the human mind with a microscope, and Swedenborg will say, like, if you want to look at the form of evil, somehow, like in your spirit, you can have the little parts of you that receive the life from God, like reversed. Like evil is just like a reversing of those things. Like actually, like literally, if you looked closely at someone's spirit, you could see where their brain is backwards, and that's what's creating this evil. So it's like, sure, it happens within the systems that God creates, and those systems were vulnerable to it, but it's not an object in itself that was created. And Swedenborg says, harmful things like viruses and all that, come about because of this potential that became realized of evil. So in his cosmology, everything, even accidents and things, comes about because of human free will. The destruction of what's good rather than something that's inherently evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that for sure. I'm kind of latching on to the last little part of that question. Did God create evil? God is love itself and wisdom itself, or goodness itself and truth itself. Evil cannot come from those sources, but there's a permission. So it's not that God created evil, but there is, so we're talking about the permission of evil. So God permits evil for the sake of freedom and for the possibility of forming a genuine heaven from the human race. So without freedom, no one could be reformed and kind of made into becoming angels. This equilibrium between heaven and hell protects that freedom. So it's a permission. It's not that God created evil.
That's great. That's great to remember. All right, we got to go. We got to go to the next one.
All right.
We're running out of time. I always think like we have plenty of time, but this is question 6 from Pauline, who asks, during a lifetime, thank you, by the way, Julie, that was a great question. During a lifetime at the spiritual school of the Lord, I often notice that there are very few school breaks. Just when you've mastered something new, taken an exam and passed it once, next time I'll probably mess up again, a new topic is immediately added to the curriculum. Sometimes it makes my rebellious streak come out. Of course, a typical case of self-pity. Do you happen to know why there are so few breaks at this school? Thank you so much for all your help. So, like, why is life? Come on, life keeps throwing stuff at you. The first thing I would say is check out the episode from that San Francisco event. That is about how the reason why there's so much, very few school breaks is there's really important stuff to be done here. And stuff that is like the benefits from that are amplified. I guess you think of it like if you're training for a marathon, you got to keep in shape for that. You got to keep up in it because that's the way you're going to get to this plateau. If we're going to regenerate, it's not that fun. But I think it's like if you have the potential for it, you're going to get pushed by the divine coach to like, let's get all the way there. Just like if you're training to be an athlete. You're doing a lot of work and you're still tired from the last one. And here comes the next one. But what do you think?
Yeah.
It's like I think of heaven in this case too. Obviously we're talking about earth, but I think at the heart of this question is the way things are set up by the Lord. It seems like it's a feature, not a bug. So for example, when Swedenborg describes heaven and even our preparation for heaven, it's a path of alternating states. And even angels cycle through changes like morning and evening states. These alterations perfect them forever. So the rhythm of learning, testing, and then new learning, it's not a flaw. It's actually the very way heaven's growth proceeds in us and in angels. So to me, it's while on earth it could be painful because especially the kind of spiritual school that you describe here is about combating hard things and kind of affirming the Lord leading you through that. But it is something that I think is part of the beautiful way in which we constantly evolve, even into eternity, as we get just more and more perfected in who we are and what we love. So
Great.
Mm,
Love that, Chris.
yeah, I have some thoughts. I think we should just finish with this question. We have two more, but I have some things to say about this one, and we can have those two for next month. We'll have them first for next month.
Sounds good.
I wanted to say, I happen to know that Pauline has been called to especially intense work in this world, doing a lot of helping people in very bad situations and people who are oppressed and trying to. So I am not surprised that you feel this way, Pauline, because you have an especially intense calling in this world, which is just amazing, but sounds exhausting at times. And so I think you're taking an accelerated course. And everybody's journey is, like some people are going to be doing more of that course, that school classes, a heavier load here on earth, and others maybe a lighter load here on earth, but they'll do more in the afterlife. So, it's like oh, go ahead.
I think you're just about to make the same point I was going to make.
Oh,
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say my youngest daughter chose to get her college degree in 3 years instead of 4 years. And just with that choice comes, comes a heavier load and more intense work. That's what I was going to say. What were you going to say, Curtis?
Well, sort of the same thing. I was going to talk about, like, let's say we don't know what we're going toward here in life, so it makes it extra confusing. If you didn't know what was going on and you were in medical school, but you didn't know you were in medical school, and you looked over at, like, some people, they already got their degree, and I'm still, like, now I still have 3 more years of school, and this is really hard, these subjects. Other people already graduated because they got their bachelor's in something. You wouldn't understand that the reason why you have extra years of school, and the reason why your school is super hard, is you're going to go and be a doctor. And that's, there's going to be a lot. That's great. You get paid well, you save lives, but yeah, you have this extra school thing. We don't know why I think that our lives would all make sense if we understood, like, what they're each training us for.
That's such a great point.
Wow.
Specific kinds of angels, right? And that take unique kinds of training. Yeah, that is great. And even though, as Chris said, this development and training continues on in the afterlife, but in heaven, way milder, like not with the intense struggle and strife in this world. But I wanted to say, Pauline got me thinking about, the person who had no breaks, it seems like, was Jesus Christ in this world. Like he was going from one temptation to another constantly. And so it made me wonder, like, how did he manage? I mean, granted, he had a divine soul, so that would have helped. But what would he do? And I thought about how sometimes he would go up to the mountain to pray. He needed to go sometimes off by himself and pray. So that's interesting to think about. Like, how can we, especially if you're in intensive work like that, how do you get a break? How do you go? Because I'll go up to the mountain, go up to love. How do you get recentered in love and calm and trust? I don't know what that would be for each person. I don't know what that would be for Pauline, but it's just interesting to think about. What is going up to the mountain to pray to you? And the other thing is, we do need, Swedenborg learned that we do need pleasure. Like, pleasure is spiritual food. There's unhealthy food and good food. There's unhealthy pleasures, but we all need some kind of pleasure, recreation, breaks. And so I hope that Pauline and everyone would consider that too, especially if you have a very intensive job. Do you have ways to take a break and have some fun, have some pleasure, have some spiritual food to rejuvenate you? Just very important, and we can't do without that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
wanted to insert
Oh,
that,
go ahead.
when you had mentioned the podcast, because talking about going through the wilderness and all this one temptation after another in the Exodus story, but they always had, oh, then they got some manna and oh, they got some water. Like there's little restorative parts and then they're on to the next struggle. But there does have to be some sort of restoration. And I think we could cooperate with the Lord to receive that if we find ways to give ourselves a break or something like that. I don't know. What do you think?
I just was struck by Swedenborg in the explanation of the story saying a couple of times, people think you can just have one spiritual crisis and then you can be regenerated. But no, it's recurring spiritual crises, one after the other, throughout the whole course of a person's life. So it is what it is. I think that the truth is, like, let's say that I was struggling financially, and I was down on my luck and around other people who were. But then I learned that in a month I would get $3 million. Think of how I would I live that next month, and I would want to encourage everyone, and I would be like, man, I think that's what life is like, because yeah, we're here in the world where there's a lot of help that's needed and a lot of work to do that's hard and painful. But the fact is, I think like the life after death, like the heaven that you go to, is so great, and you get everything you ever wanted on earth. Like they get all the deep, important things for a human being that if you understood what was coming, you'd be like, oh, let me back in there so I can get this work done. Because I want to go and help. I feel so like overly fortunate, in the grand scheme, that I want to get back in there and help people that need help. I think that like, I'm not saying that I have that attitude all the time, but I think probably if we saw our own future, that would be what it would feel like then, being in life here.
Love it.
Oh man, that's it for today. We're a little, just barely over time. Yeah, again, sorry we couldn't quite get to everyone's questions, but it's like you can't just cut off some of these great things that are coming up with other questions. So it's we appreciate everyone giving us such a great overabundance of thoughtful and earnest and good, savvy questions. So thank you everyone for that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your comments in the chat. It's just wonderful to see them pop up on our screen and know that you're all sharing such great thoughts. So thank you. And yeah, we'll get to those other questions first time next month. First in line.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Karin. Fun hanging out with you. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and love.
This was so much fun.
Great fun. Bye-bye.